Hi, it's Steve from Arteria3d. Thanks for joining me today. What we're going to be taking a look at is Fuse, which is created by Mixamo and now with Adobe 2. And it's a program that allows you to make modular characters from set pieces that are provided with the application, such as torso, leg, arm and head. You can make a variety of different character styles. Once this is done, you can then import clothing. And as you can see in front now on the screen, we have the Arteria3d Leather Warrior Costume, and this is a modular set. Helmet, then we have the torso armour, and then the boots and so forth, and you can add these items on in a modular fashion to the character. The beauty of Fuse also is that once you've added the items into the application, even though this costume was actually designed around the male character, which comes with the content download pack, this automatically fits the female variants within the software, which is incredible. So for example, if I now loaded the female character, all the torso armour and all the other elements I'd adjust in scaling to the female form, which is absolutely ingenious. Right, now let's take a look at the costume in front of you and how we actually use that within Fuse. See you in a moment. What I really enjoy about the workflow in Fuse is that in the real-time 3D view here, as we apply our substance, now the files have uploaded to Mixamo, you'll see our character we created in Fuse in the 3D main window. Some of the textures don't display exactly as they do in Fuse. Don't worry about that, they will display as we created them in Fuse in your engine. And now from here, after the auto rigging process has finished, which takes a few moments, we can now take a look and find some animations and see indeed how the character has auto rigged, which is really useful to get a feel for how the character looks animating in real time. So there's a few animations we can check out which I quite like. So if we click on this offensive idol here, and we can see straight away the character is auto rigged and moving really naturally. Or textures to our specific parts of our model's costume. You can alter the parameters in real time for the substances to create reflections, specular highlights, really bring out the normals on the character's texture, and it really does make working in this real-time view a joy, because you can see immediately how the character is actually coming on and how the textures are looking. The first thing we need to understand is where the imported clothes are actually stored with it for the Fuse application. As you can see at the moment, obviously the character is already loaded and everything's pre-configured for you. And when you actually download the files and put them into the relevant place or relevant library within Fuse, you'll actually have the ready-made character plus all the components. Now if we actually go on to the clothing section, you'll see here a variety of headings, and under each heading you'll have various modular model sections. So for our character here, which we at Arteria have created, you'll see all the sections detailed as armour. So arms, and then we have our boots, and sometimes you'll see two different versions. You'll see one which just kind of has colour indicators on the model, and then you'll have the fully textured model. The fully textured one I bracket with pre-built to identify that when you click on that, all the substances or the textures will load automatically alongside that particular modular section. The pieces with all the colour elements are shown with what Fuse call a colour map. And this colour map breaks down the various elements on your mesh which identify a separate section which you can apply a substance or texture. For example, here we have red, which is the front of the boot section, and you can see I've textured this with a kind of mottled plate metal armour effect. And then we have kind of these blue straps here, which again is a separate zone, and I put this leather on, and then as you can see going through the other colours, you can see there are various different texture elements applied to those. And this basically follows the pattern through on all our modular pieces within this kit. On some of them we even have a variety, so we have chest armour, then we have a chest armour piece which has got a larger 2K texture, and then we have a torso piece here which has a lower poly version of the mesh, because that's what we do, we provide some lower poly versions of our meshes so you can basically utilise and decide what you want to use yourself for your model. So firstly, let's look at the library or the folder section whereby all these costume elements are kept, and indeed any imported items that you import yourself will be stored in this location. So if we go to File, Browse Imported Files, this immediately takes you to this folder drop down, and you've got Mixamo Clothes. Within this are all the imported custom items for the specific model that we're talking about today, which is the Leather Armoured Warrior. Now you'll notice there are quite a lot of folders in here. Now what's happened here is that a lot of these folders contain the actual original modular sections, but then we have folders which contain metadata and other such informations for the duplicate elements we've made. Remember we used to talk about the pre-built items, whereby, for example, we've applied all the textures and substances for you, so we've made a duplicate of that and call it pre-built, and that's what that is. So this is contained within the Mixamo Clothes directory. So the first thing we're going to do from the start is to first launch our Fuse application. It takes a couple of moments to load in. Once we're started, we're presented with this workspace, and from here, again, go into Browse Imported Files, and you can see all our cloth items are there. So when you download your package from Arteria, if first of all you actually open the Fuse application and come into this folder, it makes it easy for you to drag and drop the folders into this section. Once you've done this, if we go down to File, Refresh Database, I'll actually click on Refresh Database, and all our items will show. Now, as I say, the model comes with a pre-built version of the Leather Armoured Warrior, and on my computer, obviously, this is actually stored in Documents, Fuse, Chars, a custom folder that I've made. Now, these files will actually be contained within a separate folder within your download, and that is called the same name as my character, which will be Fuse Characters, and that's in the zip file that you've downloaded for the pack. But what we're going to do is take a look at starting or creating our character from scratch. I'm going to follow the same modular character that I used for the original. So first of all, we're on our head sections. Now if we click on Male Scan 2, and after a couple of moments this will bring up our head into the 3D view. And then automatically it goes down to the next section, which is torso. Again, let's click Male Scan 2. And we're going to keep our character unified for this particular character, so it's utilising all these specific model parts for the Male Scan 2. Let's now click on our leg. What I love about the Fuse application is just the quality of the characters, already looking absolutely fantastic before we even put any clothing on. Okay, now what I do recommend with Fuse at this stage is if we do constant saves through our character creation process, because by utilising the textures within the program, sometimes it can use quite a lot of memory until we're actually export our characters. So it's always good to make constant saves so we have our work already backed up. Right, so we have our great looking mesh in front of us now. Now what you can do straight away is actually go into Customize, and you'll actually see loads of different sliders which allow you to manipulate the character in real time. So for example, excuse me, say we went down to shoulder, delt, smaller, big, and we expand this out, you can see in the 3D view that the deltoid area is expanding. Put this back down to 0, shoulders narrow, wide, traps, small, big, so that's at the back of the neck there. And then we have, biceps, small, large. See it a little bit better. And then we can increase the tricep size, so we're getting a more muscular character style. And what the beauty of this is, when we come to add our clothing, all the clothing items are done to the mesh and the sizes and proportions of the character without any mesh cut through from the clothing, which is excellent. Okay, so some other options: torso, stomach out in, so we can create different weights of our character, stomach down or up, torso overall, short or long. Quite a funny one, love handles. And so straight away we can design quite a varied and style of characters. Now if we just reset all, so that resets back to the default proportions of our character. Great, from this we can now add our clothing items, which is the exciting part. Now also note as well, when I actually grab hold of these sections, you notice it highlights various parts on the character, and this is the really cool bit, because you can actually in real time drag these and you can see on the sliders on the right it's actually altering the proportions in real time. So this is really good, it gives you a lot of control over your generated characters. There's some unique styles there. Okay, let's reset all again. So now if we move over to the clothing tab, and as I mentioned, this is the exciting part where we now start to add our meshes from our armoured leather costume pack to our model. So let's first go over and select this tab here, which is Armour Chest. We can just scroll within this section, because sometimes the thumbs aren't shown at full height, so we have to scroll, and we can select one of our model sections from here. Now I'm going to actually select this one here, which is the Torso Armour Lower Poly pre-built meaning all the textures are already applied to our specific armour section. So instantly we have the mesh shown within the 3D view, and after a couple of moments all the textures start to display on the character mesh. So as you can see, there we go, we have our great looking torso armour, and as I rotate around you can see the nice highlights appearing on the particular parts of the model. Okay, so now let's add our helmet. So if we go into armour helmets again, we have the one which has just got the colour map, and we have the one which is pre-built. Now I'm going to actually show you how to utilise the two versions. Let's first of all use the helmet section from the costume pack, which has already been set up with our substances for you. So you selected that a moment, and then in a moment it will appear in the 3D view. First displays as the raw mesh, and then as you can see here it starts to load all the substances for that. Again, great normal effects there on those metal elements in the helmet. Now also I want to show you the other armoured helmet which is in the pack, which just utilises the colour maps. Now within Fuse you have headings which are already part of Fuse, so for example tops, bottoms, shoes, hair, and then you have custom modular sections which you can create yourself. So for example, when I imported the clothing items, I actually typed in a specific name of which I want the folder name of the containing piece of armour. So in this section it was called Armour Arm. So for example, when I actually come in to import another piece, if I imported into the character selection which was actually for Armour Arm, then our piece would actually import into that folder. So basically each element you import, you've got to drop down selection of where you want the costume piece to actually go, and then it will appear in that specific heading. One thing to note, the reason I've got quite a lot of headings here is because there's a lot of different modular parts for the character, right down to the actual straps for the armour, rather than actually having those as part of the torso armour mesh. I've actually created them separate for you, so you can either turn those on or turn them off, again, which will all help in perhaps creating different polygon counts of the model. So a lower poly version wouldn't have the straps, whilst the high quality one would have the straps on. And per category, you're allowed one element on the body. So for example, if we come back over to our armour helmets, because these two are in the same category, it would only allow you to put one on at the same time, which kind of makes sense because you only want one hat at the time. But for example, if in our torso armour folder, which is under armour chest, when we say there was a different armour style in there and we selected on that, it would immediately remove this piece we've already got and replace it with our new armour. Now if we want to swap over our helmet, there's two ways we can do this. Either to select it and delete, or simply if we come into armour helmet, I'll demonstrate how the items are now replaced. So let's select on this one here, and you'll see it'll remove in a moment and the new piece added. It just takes a little while for that to do. Okay, so it's now replaced, and you can see this time we have our colour maps. Now when I first started to add the textures to our helmet, this is what I was presented with as the first model piece. Now from this, we now go into texture, select our helmet, and you'll see we're now presented with a series of headings. Main helmet is the red section, edging is this blue section all around the edges of the model, centre metal for yellow, and then we have the protectors, which are cyan at the back, and each of these sections allows you to actually pre-configure a separate texture element or substance per part. Now when you actually come to export your models out, you can actually export as substances, and then these can be utilised in many various engines now, or you can export as standard textures, and all the substances are basically baked down into a texture space. So now if we select on one of our helmet texture headings or group headings, we can now select the various parts and apply a different texture. So let's go to the main helmet, and if we come down to this leather section, there's some great leather textures. Let's select this one here, and you'll see this is applied only to that red zone. From there, we now have some nice parameters to adjust the look of the texture. So I always like to really ramp up the normal intensity. Ambient occlusion, create shadows around the elements. And then we had leather roughness, which is basically the shininess, if you like, of our texture, our substance. So if we bring that down, it's getting more and more glossy to the extreme of this point here. And if we bring this right up, it loses all the specularity, all the reflections. For the leather armour, I thought this type did have a nice sheen to it, so kind of set it about here, 0.43. And now if we go on to our edging, I've used that texture again actually, because it puts a nice metal border along the edges of these sections. And if we go to cheek guards, which is this here, and I've used this particular leather texture. Let's now go into the settings here so we can age it, put some age to the leather, and then we can go to normal intensity, and then strap roughness. These are the straps of the texture, and if we bring that down, let's give them a nice sheen, not too much. Okay, and now if we go to our metal button, which are all these metal studs which are on our model, if we go down to metal and select this one here, And look at there. I just love the way the reflections show. Just really is inspiring as you're making your model. And then we can have bumpiness, normal intensity, and indeed the colour of the metal. I want to make a nice high gloss there. If we go to protect the cyan, or cyan, and we can now put another texture there. So perhaps we could add this one. Or I've used this one actually on the original model. So predominantly we've got this nice leather effect, but what's good by having them in different zones and groups is we can alter the scale of them, alter the size and so forth, and have more manipulation. Now if we actually go onto our general parameters, you'll see we have texture resolution, which goes from anywhere from 64 up to 24.8. Now as mentioned, at the moment we fuse, I think it seems to use quite a lot of texture memory, so it's always better I think to keep the textures around 512, 1024. And basically before you actually start adding your textures or substances to the specific part of the model, if you first set the texture resolution, I find that works fine rather than adding textures and then changing later. That just is a better workflow for myself, I find. Okay, so if we go into this center strap and add this texture again, so straight away we've textured our model. Now what you can now do is, like with my clothing items, when you actually go onto this and you'll see pre-built, one with all the leather textures on, we can actually save this as an item, and that's indeed how I made the pre-built version. So if we go to Files, Create Preset from Item, it will now bring up a name to add, type in the name, press OK, and it'll select and save the model with all these textures to the same folder area, so that when you click on it again, it'll load all the default textures for our model. We can now add the other elements of our armour, so if we come up to Arm, and you can see again we have the pre-built version which has got all the textures already on, so if we click that, and just wait a few moments for the model to appear in the 3D window and for the textures to load. Okay, just loading the textures. Now actually, to show you how the armour is adjusted, if we go into our Customize tab, in fact first let's add the armour for the shoulders. We can see how it all works universally on the arm section. When we increase the size and the depth of the bicep and the tricep muscles, you can see the armour pieces, they will actually expand with the mesh. And what's really good about the algorithm that they seem to be using on this is that it seems to expand all the mesh pieces without any cut through at all, which is really, really good. Okay, so now if we go into our Customize tab, and we actually go to the arm section, and we're going to increase the size of the bicep and the tricep, and then we'll see how the armour fits the new size of the body part accordingly. So let's increase the bicep to full, and you'll notice what's happening now is that it's actually cutting through the armour. When this first happened I thought, what's going on here? But as you'll see, when you release the actual setting, wait a moment, and then the actual mesh will change in size accordingly, and there's no cut through at all. Okay, so if we go down to some other areas, so for example if we look at the torso, and let's increase actually the waist. So if we increase this, you'll see the waist going out and cutting through the armour. Take our mouse pointer off, couple of moments, and there we go, the armour has fitted the new size. And as I say, I'm really impressed with whatever algorithm they're using on that, because it gives great results without any cut through. Okay, reset that all, and now we can go back to the clothing tab and we can add some further armour elements to our model. Okay, so in the clothing, and we'll now add the leg armour to the model. So let's select this element here, the pre-built leather armour for the legs. And you can see straight away we have the nice armour for the thighs, and again all the textures have already shown. Really do like the look and style of that leather texture. Now, as mentioned, if we wanted to now alter that, let's select our armour piece, go into texture, and we have on this particular one 3 different group selections: the edging, the main armour, and for the buttons. So let's select main armour, and now if we come down to here and select this leather substance, this will be applied, as you can see, which is the same one as the texture used above. And then again you can come along and use all these to alter the settings. Again, the roughness, that alters the specularity or the shininess of these pieces. It's quite nice. Okay. Now if you wanted to actually go back to the originals, you could just adjust the textures here, or simply click on the piece and the piece would go back to its default setting. So we've just clicked on the original piece again. There's a couple of moments where it changes. There we go. And as you can see here, the textures are now loading in, and there we go, back to the original piece. Now on this particular costume, we've give great flexibility in that the actual strap details, we've provided a separate meshes, so you can include them on the model if you wish, or leave them off for a more lower poly version. So let's come onto the armour torso straps, select this first one, and you can see that the straps to keep the armour together will appear in a moment. Again, this is for the torso area. There we go. Again, pre-configured with the texture because we selected the pre-built version. As you can see here, we also have the straps there on top. And again, we can come down to the leg area now, and we have some nice straps to keep these attached to the torso section. So we'll click on that, and now we'll see these appear in a 3D window. Here we go. Texture now applied. Really like those, the detail on the straps really do add some extra high detail to the costume. So now we can move on to adding perhaps the boots. I was going to actually add the boots first, but there's something I'll show you by actually adding the trousers first. What is a really cool feature of Fuse is you use an occlusion map. Let's talk about the maps. You've got a collection of maps. Basically, you have, when importing a model piece of geometry, Fuse asks for you to import various textures or various shader maps. Now you don't have to do this, but they just added to the model's look by using them. First one's a normal map, then we have an ambient occlusion map, which is for all the self-shadowing on the mesh, and then we have a detail map. For example, if you wanted to add wear and tear and dirt perhaps to this texture here, this leather on the torso, you could apply a detail map. So various parts of your UV map on this, you would add dirt to the model. After that, you've got the colour map, which we've talked about that. It maps out different regions of the model to apply different substances to them. But you also have an occlusion map, and what the occlusion map is basically you can detail off sections of the actual base body to be hidden from rendering. So any costumes over the top would be rendered, but not the underlying polygons. This helps with performance within the engine. So if we actually look at how that works, I've actually got one on the boots and on the trousers. The boots cuts off the shins and the feet, but the trousers, the way I did the occlusion map for that, it just cuts all the leg areas off. So let's click on these trousers, and you can see what happens now. There we go. We actually lose the shins underneath. The feet remain, but the shins are removed. And again, you can alter this colour map as you please using the original UV map that comes with using the Content Creators package, and in Photoshop or in some other application you can actually use the colour black, which will actually delete polygons from the model, and anything white will leave those areas intact. So now if we add the boots, let's go to here, and the boots also will remove any polygons in this particular example, although you're not going to be able to see it because the feet are obviously hidden inside the boots. The boots are removed and the shin areas. The model's looking really cool so far. Now we can add further detail to our torso piece. So on clothing, if we come down to our torso chest straps, and this adds some nice mesh detail that actually connects the shoulder pads together and keeps them intact. Okay, so that's added now. Nice metal rings and leather piece in the middle. Some further detail for the torso armour comes by way of this piece here, which is the lower plate straps of this piece here. It's a strap section for this. Okay, so I've deliberately put this one in like this with the original colour map. Let's go into texture mode and select this. And now if we select on our metal, let's go to the metal tab for the substances, click this metal texture here. And great, that's turned to that nice texture there. Let's select the straps now, the yellow, and come over to our leather. And let's select this substance here. And there we go. We have nice leather texture on that area. So those straps really do add nice additional detail, and it's up to you whether you want to use them because they are optional. Let's now add the wrist gloves to our character. So if we come over to it, so Armour wrist gloves, again we have the version with the colour map and the pre-built one. Let's select the pre-built one. So as you can see, it doesn't take too long to actually put the meshes into the scene and apply the textures, which is nice. Okay, these really do finish the model off nicely. So now let's add the guards for the leg, or the knee area rather. So we select on this first icon here to bring the pre-built version up with all the textures to load. And as you can see, that's now appeared on the knee section. And the textures are just taking a minute to load, and there we go, we have them. Elements like this, like the straps, really do add some extra nice detail to the model. With that done, I want to add one last element, and that is to the helmet. And if we go into clothing, we actually go to helmet motif. Again, another modular item to add further detail to the model. So let's click on this first one here, and this adds a nice metal piece to the armour here, as you can see. Now, if you look, there's some geometry from the helmet poking through, and I've actually made this piece like this to show you how we can actually alter and move geometry in real time with Infuse. And this is so good, for example, if you've made some pieces and you've imported them, applied all the textures, but you find there's some slight mistakes or geometry that shouldn't be where it is, you've got a special tool which is under Edit, Modify Geometry, and it allows you to grab hold of geometry and move. As you can see, as we go over pieces, they're highlighted. So if we select this here, press the left mouse button and just pull it out, there we go. We've now moved our piece as so. And this works great, for example, say when we uploaded our character to the Mixer Mode pipeline and we found that the auto rigger was making the shoulder pads move with the head because he was slightly too much over. What we can simply do is increase the modifier size, turn on symmetry so it affects the other one as well. Grab hold of this here, just hover over, and as you can see, left mouse button press, and we can just move our geometry as we wish, almost like sculpting it. Brilliant. Now let's add a substance to this piece. So let's go into texture mode, select the mesh. Notice we've got one selection, which is a metal red. Let's go into metal and select my favourite, which is this second substance here. And look at the detail on that there. It's really good. So we could adjust the normal intensity, You can see it's really coming out now, the detail and the bumpiness. Turn ambient occlusion down or up to make it more darker. Brilliant. So with that done, we now have our leather armour costume complete. Now what I'm going to do is actually show you how to interchange the body which is underneath the armour, and this is where some magic starts to happen, really. Okay, so first of all, let's select a different male. So male scan 3, and it just takes a few moments for this to change. And what this automatically does as well is changes all the skin tone to match the new head which is going into place. And if there's any different body proportions, it'll adjust all the clothing atop to actually suit the new body which is now in place. So brilliant, there we go. But watch this. Let's select female scan 1. Watch what happens to the torso area. This really is ingenious, and means as a developer like myself, I don't have to design different armour sets for female or males. Just waiting for it to work on screen there. So the female changes over. Now this is the magic. Let's now select the female scan torso. And now you'll see all this area now changes to suit the female body of female scan 4, and all the armour atop moves in accordance with the new dimensions underneath. And again, this saves so much time as a developer because you don't have to do different armour sets for male and female. Look at that, absolutely brilliant. It's now adjusted all that to the shape of the female. That is so cool. So that's a last little thing before we actually look at the export options of Mixamo Fuse, and just brilliant. Okay, join me in a moment. In fact, before we actually look at the export options, let's do some more alteration to further show what we can do on the actual character. Now, what I'm going to do now, it's got the original legs of the previous character. So if we go down and choose female scan 4, you'll see that in a few moments the leg area changes, the size of the legs change, and all the armour and mesh atop now fits the character underneath. Again, just takes a few moments for this to happen. And then what we can look at is altering the size of the biceps because they're quite large here. There you go. It automatically refreshes the texture above, and there we go. We've now got the female legs that are joined to the female torso and the new head. Brilliant. Now, what we can do is go into Customize, go into our bicep section, and if we bring these down from 100 and take them right down, also make the triceps small, the armour will adjust in a moment to suit the new size. There we go, and you've seen that in real time adjusted those areas to fit the new body that we've created. And so with Fuse you've got so many options, so many customization options, and you only need to create generally one mesh for male and female because Fuse does the rest for you. Absolutely ingenious. So now we'll look at the export options of Fuse. So now we come to the export section, and this is where we get our character out of Fuse, and we can do various things and then put into our game engines or whatever we use. So you can go to File and Export the model as a standard OBJ, and that will do exactly what it does. That won't be pre-rigged, that won't have a skeleton, that'll just be the OBJ with all the costumes, everything on. We secondly have the option for Export Textures, and we've got some nice options here. You can either export the substances as physically based, so most of the engines now use physically based rendering. So basically, as what you see in Fuse, all the settings you've altered, they'll display that within your game engine. We've even got settings for Unity 5, so it'll actually export standard texture maps for Unity. It's all set up for Unity 5 and the same for Unreal 4. So that's really good. Okay, let's cancel that. The second option we've got is to actually upload to the Mixamo website, whereby we then use the auto rigger to actually rig our character, apply skeleton, and then we can export it as an FBX with the skeleton intact. And indeed we can also add animations if we so wish to purchase from Mixamo, some further animations. The beauty of the FBX that it provides is that it'll work seamlessly within Unity, for example with a mechanism system, and it really does provide the last part of a fantastic pipeline. To upload to Mixamo, we go to here, Animate with Mixamo. It seems like I'm not logged into my Adobe Creative Cloud, so for a moment let me go and sort that out. Right, I'm now logged into my Adobe Cloud account, and if we go to Animate with Mixamo, and you can put your character name in there, you've just left it by default, press save, and what it's doing now is packaging all the elements of the character up, ready to upload to the Mixamo site. So whilst it's doing that, I'll just pause the video and resume when the files get to the Mixamo site. Now the files have uploaded to Mixamo, you'll see our character we created in Fuse in the 3D main window. Some of the textures don't display exactly as they do in Fuse. Don't worry about that, they will display as we created them in Fuse in your engine. And now from here, after the auto rigging process has finished, which takes a few moments, we can now take a look and find some animations and see indeed how the character has auto rigged, which is really useful to get a feel for how the character looks animating in real time. So there's a few animations we can check out which I quite like. So if we click on this offensive idol here, and we can see straight away the character is auto rigged and moving really naturally. Let's take a look at a few more animations. Okay, something quite appropriate here, the sword and shield style animations. And look at that, doesn't that look great? I could just sit here for hours testing all these animations, they just look really cool. If you click this here, toggle follow camera, that'll just move the camera with our character. Absolutely brilliant. So from here, what we can do is obviously using the Mixamo site, you can add animations and purchase them and so forth. And then when we actually want to export our character, we can do that simply by exporting using the Mixamo site as an FBX, and the skeleton will go with it, and that can be used in all the various game engines. Great, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video on the Leather Warrior Armour in Fuse, and it's give you a good oversight how this is actually used. And enjoy using the pack. I'll see you soon. Bye.